I just didn't know why it was triggering me so much. And to be with you, Tara, was awesome. And to be with your family was incredible, but it was so glaring, the things that I didn't have.
What was your first memory, your thought of what Christmas was? What did that even mean to you?
Well, there's a couple of memories that pop up. Being in foster care and not having any gifts, but watching others open gifts. Everybody was always mad at each other. There were still aspects of the Christmas that we were able to participate in. It just, the crux of those memories are that we were forgotten.
In all of the good times and even the trials, through tears and through laughter, yeah, I know that I'll smile when I think of you. Smile for the things you do. Smile, God gave me you. You are the reason I smile. Yeah.
This is Behind Our Smiles.
Pursuing connection.
And finding joy.
Even in the struggle. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Behind Our Smiles podcast. We are Joe and Tara Buchanan.
Yeah, we're so glad that you're hanging out with us, and we love sharing about what makes you smile about your husband or wife. So if you've not done that yet, you can just email us, Tara, T-A-R-A, at behindoursmiles.com. Today it is Dave sharing about his wife, Ashley, and this is what he says makes him smile about Ashley. He says, my wife loves to decorate our house for Christmas. She takes almost an entire day to completely transform our house into a bright, happy, warm, inviting celebration of the birth of Jesus. It is truly an amazing sight to see every room transformed.
Thank you
That's
for
really
sharing.
cool. And that's a tangible smile. Like you can literally see it. Thanks for sharing that, Dave. Appreciate it.
What makes you smile, right? If you are a wife or a husband and your spouse goes to town for Christmas and makes your home amazing. I've been to homes like that.
I sometimes go to town for Christmas.
Yeah,
but not that kind of. Okay.
I don't necessarily go berserko with the decorations, but I've been to some friends' homes of ours, and they do put so much effort into it. It is like a different home where it's like, wait a minute, what happened to all your old furniture? It's like the furniture swapped out and the lamps are swapped out, and every room is transformed, and it's quite a gift and talent. If you have that gift, I am amazed.
It is funny that as the kids have gotten older, our decorations have gotten less.
Well, again, it's like you kind of go, what decorations really make me happy, and which ones are just like there for the fun of it? So I think, when we're in the Christmas season now, we start to reevaluate like what's important, because again, there's things that we've done just because we've always done them, right? And then some things don't matter as much as we thought they did. But when it comes down to it, what we mostly struggle with, Joe, is this concept as we move into the holidays and we go, okay, it's time to decorate the house for Christmas. There's not necessarily just one feeling that dominates, and there's not just, we don't land in the same place, me and you. That sometimes Christmas feels complicated is the word I'm kind of like saying, like, and I feel like there's been people we talk to, there's the people who are Christmas crazy, right? Yep. October 1st or November 1st, they're taking
June.
the tree. Yeah. How many more Christmas can you have? And the extreme Christmas lovers. And then there's the bah humbug Scrooges, who don't like it. And then there's some times where you feel complicated. You're like, kind of feel a little bit of both. And I think that's how we have worked through in our marriage. Like how we feel about
I don't think it'd be hard Christmas. To guess who is who. You tend to be the one that gets kind of excited.
I'm more on the excited end of, I like celebrations. Yeah. I like parties.
Although, the whole Christmas thing, I think, does get long for you.
Yes.
But you do enjoy that, where I enjoy it much more now than I did in my earlier days. And I spent a lot of my time in earlier Christmases trying not to let my feelings ruin it for everybody else. So
we did an episode very similar to what we're sharing today. When we first started the podcast, which is funny because it's been a while now, we mentioned that we passed 3 years of podcasting. And when we started the podcast, episode number 9, landed at Christmas. We did Christmas episode, and 9 now feels like it's a single digit number.
Yeah.
But we titled that one, Why Don't You Like Christmas? Because that was often what I thought in my mind when we got married and all that was like, okay, Christmas is the holidays and it's fun and it's Christmas and it's church stuff and it's Jesus and all these good things to celebrate. And then suddenly the clash of worlds when, why don't you like Christmas? And now I understand a lot better, but that was something we had to work through. Why don't you like Christmas? Why don't you like birthday cake?
It really perplexed you in the early days. And I was able to fool some people, like the peripheral people around me, I was able to, they didn't know that, you know, it was a struggle for me, but you being so close to me understood that was really difficult. And so I couldn't hide it from you. And so you're always like, yeah, I don't understand. Christmas is amazing.
Yeah. And for me, you know, I grew up in a very functional, very happy 2-parent family, and Christmas was kind of a big deal too. I mean, all my memories of Christmas are positive. You know, there always were gifts. There always was party. We had grandparents and family nearby. I had a list, and most times my stuff on my list came true, right? This element of, I really hope I get this, and I get it. And I mean, the hardest part for Christmas for me might have been that my dad worked nights for many, many years. So occasionally he couldn't quite make the certain day, but my dad seemed to be kind of almost magical in that season, where he would still somehow show up. And I think the key was he didn't sleep. But many times he would get off work at 8 o'clock, and so we couldn't start Christmas till he got home from work. And again, we had Christmas, but he didn't sleep. But anyway, Christmas was positive. I was involved in my church. There's always was multiple plays and musicals happening involved here. So in my mind, getting married too and starting that tradition with my family, and like, okay, me and you together and with our children, was something I could look forward to say the holidays and we'll be this and that. So that's my basic, very fast version of childhood Christmas season. But I know that as I got to know you, you had like an entirely different experience.
Well,
with celebrating the holidays in general, or Christmas Day in general, or just, I mean, I know there's a lot to unpack there, but you don't have that same memory.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the really early days, I'm not even sure I understood why I was not enjoying it so much. Like, I knew that, obviously I knew my past. I knew that there was a lot there. I just didn't know why it was triggering me so much. And to be with you, Tara, was awesome. And to be with your family was incredible, but it made it so glaring, the things that I had lost, the things that I didn't have.
Best you can remember, you know, obviously Christmas is sort of cultural, and even where you grew up, it still existed. But what was your first memory or thought of what Christmas was? Like, how, as a child, when you said it's Christmas, what did that even mean to you?
Well, there's a couple of memories that pop up. One is seeing our Christmas tree go through the front window because my parents were fighting and scared to death that my dad was going to end the life of my mom. And then being in foster care and not having any gifts, but watching others open gifts.
So you knew that this goodness existed.
Those were the earlier, and then everybody was always mad at each other. And so the joy that you had, I don't really remember in my early childhood days seeing that.
Do you remember making a list?
No.
Or even bothering to make one?
No.
But there's stuff you wanted, perhaps.
Maybe. Yeah. Perhaps, you know what? This is the silly, like, I do remember like praying, like, God, give me lots of money so that, or give my mom lots of money so that she can come home, or she can come get me from this foster home that I was in. So yeah, I'm sure that there were things, and you would watch, like in foster care, in one home in particular, they had their own daughter, and then we were so you could watch her get stuff for Christmas, and it wasn't like a pity party. Like, there were still aspects of the Christmas that we were able to participate in. It just, the crux of those memories are that we were forgotten and kind of neglected, and really where it really hurt for me was watching my brother not get, he could get excited. He was a little bit more animated, and watching him in that disappointment was hard, I think.
So even though you knew that the cultural end of this thing of trees and Christmas, and I know you had a general, somewhat of a religious background maybe in your early childhood, but did you understand the real meaning of Christmas, or what was that even like taught to you? Like the idea of Jesus in the manger, that was kind of... off your radar?
I knew that Jesus was a part of Christmas.
Just kind of wondering, like, what your perception was as a child.
I understood the aspect of the birth of Jesus. I think, if I think back, my big thing was Jesus didn't exist. He was like the tooth fairy or Santa Claus. It just was this made up thing, or made up whatever. And that one day you'd realize that was also
so learning about
real.
Jesus wasn't good news.
Well,
right? I mean,
yeah, to me, Jesus
news.
didn't exist, though. And honestly, in my earlier memories of religion, I remember being told that God was counting everything I would ever do wrong and I've ever done wrong. And if you cross a certain threshold, then you no longer can go to heaven. And so I literally remember as a child trying to keep track in my head of the thing. So that was my religious or
No, that's interesting
religion
because like we talk
aspect.
about Christmas, the celebration of Jesus, and good news, right? That there's hope for the world and joy to the world. And so you might have known Jesus existed, possibly, maybe, but it wasn't like good news. It's like I'm in trouble.
Well, I knew of Jesus, don't get me wrong, but I didn't believe he was real. So it didn't. And again, I'm little. And when I would pray to God, I didn't know what I was praying to. I just knew that if God was real, then he could make it so that my mom or dad could come get me from the horrible foster home I was in. And so I think when I saw those prayers not answered over and over and over again, I began to believe that God didn't exist.
It's more like was that disappointment than my mom and dad got everything right on my list, right? And kind of that sense of, no, that just, it's interesting because when you share that, it does make so much more make sense of year after year after year, similar patterns, maybe different characters and different settings in different homes, but same sense. Like Christmas is about being forgotten. Christmas is about disappointment. Christmas is about there's no hope for whatever I want or need
like it
to
was
come
a
true.
complete foreign concept, I believe. I just want to make sure I'm being straight honest with this, because when I met your family and you asked me, you said my parents want to know what you want for Christmas.
Yes. Yes, what's on your list?
It was so interesting. Now, don't get me wrong. There were families along the way that I did live with for periodic pieces of time. So there were times that I was like before I met you and after I was 18 that I'm sure I got a Christmas gift that I liked. Don't get me wrong. I know that it was just overshadowed so much by the past not being just so much trauma around the holidays. And now that I'm older and I'm an adult, I understand there's just so much that goes in. Like even for us, I wanted to make it perfect for our kids. I didn't want them to know that I was struggling or that. And then I would get so frustrated if I couldn't do it right. And so all those things. So I think I understand all that was going into the chaos of the holidays, but that's all I knew the holiday. I'm like, why do we even do holidays? Like, what's the point?
Well, and like you mentioned, even if you're with family. So for us, being with family was a positive thing. But you're almost saying, hey, being with family is not even a treat itself, even if there are no gifts. If you're kind of getting away from the materialistic end of, did you get a new bike? Some people don't have those means, but you say, but you know what? We were all together. And as you share, you're like, actually, all being together was not a good thing either, because there's more fighting and tension and lack of that sense of community.
But I would have given anything to be with my
right,
parents.
that's all you really wanted for Christmas.
Right.
Right?
I was in and out of foster care. And yes, I was adopted later and in an adoptive home, and that was definitely better. But it still wasn't the element of what you're talking about, that closeness and love. And
like, hey, if all we have is each other, that's enough. You're like,
no,
that's
I never,
not.
and I didn't experience that till I was married.
Yes, to say it's all, if it's just us, that's okay.
Yeah.
And there's that, because sometimes that's a sweet story you hear too, where, okay, the finances aren't there for fancy gifts, but we have each other. And to know that that's almost what you really wanted on your list was like a family that would be loving and, would care. So, and I think we had like, quote unquote, like good holidays together when we were dating. But I think as we got married and we had to make our own traditions and it's just us and we're maybe visiting family instead of, living separately, that the clash came. Again, I remember like you being sort of on with the program. You didn't boycott the holidays. Okay, we'll buy a tree. Okay, we'll get gifts for so-and-so. Okay, we'll do this and that. But it wasn't too many seasons that go by to go, he doesn't like it. And for me, I first wanted to believe that, but you know what? Things are better now. Like this is the family you wanted, or not in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Like you have someone who loves you. I'm asking you what you want for Christmas so I can get you something that will make you smile. But you still had that cloud over you nearing the holidays that I eventually realized, oh wait, I can't cut through this. That me just buying you a new belt would not cut through the cloud, even if I was cheerful. And we felt that culture clash because no matter how much I wanted you to feel better, you couldn't.
Well, I wanted to feel
that.
better.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted it too. It's hard when you experience trauma, and as you walk through trauma and disappointment on those levels. It's hard to, and plus I think that there were definitely times when I would be punished or disciplined for getting excited about something when I was really young. And so that kind of worked that out of me. So even if I wanted to, it was very difficult. And I always thought like the shoe's going to drop or whatever that phrase is because I like one of my absolute favorite Christmas memories as a kid was in a foster home, and I had what we called him the welfare man. I don't know what his real title was and what he worked for, but he was a place where we would go occasionally and he would ask us questions and we'd go back or whatever, but he brought us gifts. It was a Christmas Eve. I believe it was Christmas Eve because it was at night. Brought my brother and I gifts. They were in boxes and they looked identical, and we got to open them, and they were these yellow Dunkin' Dunk trucks. Dump
1970s edition.
Yeah, I've talked about that, but that was the greatest gift. And I think for me, I couldn't believe like it was mine. And I remember my brother, because we were in the foster home together, so he would look at me. He was literally would say, "Really? Like really?" And so we got those, but we left that home like a short time later, and we weren't allowed to take them with us. And so for me, that was just that kind of drove that trauma down, that disappointment,
and anything
if you will.
that you think is good is not really as good as you think it is. So, okay, this is going to be so good. I got a new truck. No, actually you didn't. So don't get your hopes up and don't be excited when good things even come your way. And I didn't even realize till many, many years to say it is like a subconscious response that like, you didn't really think I was going to leave you necessarily. We were okay and we were healthy enough, but to say, be in this moment and enjoy it, you subconsciously going, but I really can't enjoy it because something might happen where it's going to be taken away. And I think it took me a long time to help to come your way to go, okay, it's not personal to me. And you don't necessarily want to choose those reactions at first, but we begin to recognize it quicker.
Yeah.
Like I'm just, my old feelings of it's all going to fall apart and something bad's going to happen.
And I think it
years.
actually is funny that you say might, because I think it grew into might. I think in the early days it was will.
Yeah.
This is bad things are going to happen, so don't get your hopes set on anything and don't get your hopes up or whatever. But I think once the kids began to come along, I began to really, I mean, with you, I think early on I saw that my lack of being able to rise to the occasion to find cheer was actually stealing your joy. And I think I recognized that. And so I remember kind of honestly praying about it and just saying, okay, God, how do I, and it didn't get better overnight. It wasn't better like the very next Christmas or anything like that. But I think we began to take strides or steps toward at least a healthier balance where you began to express empathy and understanding, but I was able to rise to the and understand how you could get excited. And then when the kids came along, that's when real healing in that arena began to happen. And I began to want them not to carry my weight, but to be excited on their own. And I began to understand how your parents wanted you to thoroughly enjoy it. And
well, I think it's been such a long journey, Joe, that we're obviously, 27 something plus years past that. And I saw that in you to go, okay, I actually don't feel that great about the holidays. Not so much, I don't think it's nice to say I don't like the holidays. I mean, we say that, but really it's like, I don't like the way I feel around the holidays. That's all it was. I want my kids to feel quote unquote positive and good and all that. I want my wife to have a good holiday. So I think that was the first step was I recognize I like the way I feel, but I don't want to be downing everybody out and hiding in my room and can't engage. But I couldn't force you to say, but feel better. You're like, okay, I don't like the way I feel, but I'm going to do the best I can to make it good for you. But I think year by year goes by, it's less like there's less pressure on it. Part of it's like, you know what? So that's where we are right now. Like I know my husband struggles. I know he doesn't like the way he feels around the holidays. I cannot force him into feeling whatever I want him to feel, fill in the blank. I have to kind of accept it. And I think that's where things got complicated to go, this is a hard time for him. And just accepting that and then saying, hey, how can I love him well in a time when things are not easy for him? And he's only remembering those negative emotions, those negative memories and those things he can't get out of his head, and learning to kind of just say, that's how it's going to be versus fighting it and resenting it. I think in that process, we've grown.
Yeah. So I think there's two things. One is, and I share this a lot, the holidays are like magnifying glass, right? They tend to magnify whatever your experience is or has been. So
or
if
how your
you've
life is going, right?
Yes. If you've experienced trauma and you've had difficulty, the holidays tend to bring that out. I don't know why. They just tend to do it.
Or
if you've had incredible upbringing.
If you just got engaged and you have a new baby. Like, I remember the first year of Christmas when I had a baby, I'm like, this is the best. Because my life felt good. Like, or I think I remember the second Christmas when I was pregnant over Christmas. I'm like, oh, being pregnant over Christmas is kind of wild too. Like the birth of the baby. I get it now. So exactly. Really good. When you have good news, you're celebrating. But if you don't have good news to celebrate and there's heartache and there's grief or loss.
Or loneliness.
It's like, it just, the knife in the stomach kind of feeling, because again, everyone around you is quote unquote.
So that's the first thing I had to recognize, is that there is something about the holidays that tends to magnify the things that you're experiencing. That was first. Number two, I think over time, as I began to just rise to the occasion, not lie, not fake it till I make it, not that, but really genuinely want it to be a good experience in the house for the kids, not to have the heaviness there. As I began to do that, I began to go walk through that healing process. I started to believe the things that I wanted to believe. I started to, the things that I was telling my kids, I started to believe those things. And I think over time, watching my kids get really excited about Christmas and of course Jesus and the birth of Jesus and those things, really watching people, your parents, so many people in our lives love on our kids the way that they have. I could spend an entire podcast just thanking people, but watching that happen brought such healing to me, and watching people love on you and that just made it, God really set the ingredients right for great healing to happen. And I think that's, and it doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that everything is perfectly right. There are things that I wish could be different, right? From my past, even to this day, a relationship with my brother, for instance, or a relationship with my parents.
It's still complicated.
Right.
And so even, throughout our marriage, whatever, but holidays too, there's an issue of like, okay, his side, her side, are we seeing your parents, his parent? And we go, okay, we do have people in your life that care about you quite a bit, but like there's that gap there of like, yeah, it's the holidays. People we just meet would say, oh, do you go and see Joe's parents? I'm like, oh, it's complicated. It's complicated. It's hard to explain why sometimes, I don't know, it's complicated. And so again, the holidays bring that up more. It's like, of course, this and, and at that point we go, we're grateful for the people we do have in our lives. We're grateful for my parents, and they're people that love us and support us. But there's that part of your life that will always be complicated, and it's not easy to explain in a word or a sentence. And I'm sure many people listening have that same experience. Like, it's just complicated why we do or don't, why we can or can't see people that are considered family, right? And it's like, maybe it changes from year to year. Maybe it changes from, it's just in that, I think the reason we wanted to do this episode is permission to say, sometimes it's complicated.
Yeah.
And you have to lean on the Lord to go, how do I navigate these relationships in a time that's already so fraught with emotion?
And it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to say no. I think that was another big thing. I used to feel guilty about not wanting to see certain aspects of a relationship, people that I...
Or just knowing your own limits.
In the past, right.
Like already you're sort of feeling a little bit emotionally pulled to go, okay, what is our limits? And I think it goes back to, okay, are we celebrating Christmas, the birth of Jesus, and what that significance is to our life and our salvation? Or are we celebrating Santa and sleighs and presents and trees? It's like, okay, the cultural aspect of it, we have lots of options for how we do that.
Yeah.
We don't we don't have to throw the baby out the bathwater. We can keep our celebration for what Jesus means to our lives and the light that it brings into our lives. And if we don't want to put up a tree, you don't have to, we do, but like kind of saying, what's the essential part of this and what's the non-essential? And I think for you and then meet later on with us and even with having kids and more and more options to go, let's figure out what's essential and or important or significant than just more and more and more and more, more and more holiday stuff. You're like, I'm not even sure what this has to do with anything. Yeah. It doesn't have anything to do with our faith, our values, our things we enjoy. It's just something to do. Or like, nah. So we're kind of working on that too.
So I've really grown to appreciate the Christmas music. I've really grown to appreciate some of the traditions. I've really grown to appreciate how much our kids find such joy this time of year. And you, I didn't steal all your joy.
No.
You have a lot
well,
of it.
and I think we can sit on this side of the table, Joe, that even though we had for a while there, those childhood memories were so strong, and I know they still are. But now it's like we've got a significant amount. I mean, we have almost 25 years of raising our kids, maybe when they're younger, it doesn't matter. But like now our kids literally, who are grown and mostly grown, are like, oh my goodness, like best memories ever. You remember this, remember that. And like they literally have those same memories. And you do too. Like, oh, now it's like, remember when the kids were little and remember this stuff. Like, okay, we do have a second set of memories and it doesn't discount the earlier ones. And it doesn't make them go away, but at least it's not your only.
It does. I mean, and it overcrowds it. Yeah. I mean, it really does. The joy of the Lord, right, is our strength. But the joy that God has brought into my life really does overcrowd it. And we've made so many home videos, just these short little home videos over the years. And when we sit and watch those, especially around the holidays, and watch those, I eat it up watching the kids get excited and watching how they're
And again, there are a lot of years
processing.
too, we couldn't get everything on their list. There's times like they had really extensive lists and we're like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But we're still looking back and going, we had so many great memories because again, it was being together.
Or when the kids will say, that was my favorite gift. And you and I are looking at each other like we actually kind of homemade that.
Yeah, that came from the dollar store.
Yeah. But because again, at the end of the day, it really was this idea that our kids, I remember asking you one time around, it was Mother's Day, not Christmas, but it was around the holidays going, not Christmas holiday, but do you think they know I love them? And even at Christmas, I think when those things pull out, that's why, and you're like, the thought has never even crossed their mind. Well, and that for me was huge because I can sometimes, or I think especially if you've walked through trauma, you can think that if you're dealing with your trauma, then you're letting those around you down. But maybe, in learning how to work through that and walking through that healing process, that has been a huge thing to know that it's okay that I'm experiencing that doesn't mean that people have to be let down.
Right. But I think it did make you sensitive or oversensitive to, do they really know I'm loved? Like, so a couple of times when we were raising the kids and we do the Christmas gift. I'm like, this is great. And I'm like Miss Modest and frugal and just, hey, we make do what we have. And that, I'm fine with that, and then towards the end, you're like, but there's got to be like a big gift, like almost like there's a big kahuna of something. And you'd go a little bit off of our budget and get this big thing. And I'm like, really, they're fine. They know they're loved. They're having a Christmas. We got everything on many things that they'll enjoy. But now it was like later on that I realized that was coming out of you're going, but I need to make sure it's good. Like, cause I don't want them ever to experience what I did. And like, I just got to make sure there's that moment and that thing. And after a while we've learned to like, kind of like give a little grace to that, going, really, that was not for your kids. That was for you. You know, right. It was for Joe. Yes. Like Dad had to feel like it's going to be something good, even though for many years our kids were so happy and content with whatever. We got such wild creative gifts sometimes. So like, hey, we just did what worked, what worked for us.
But no, it'd be Christmas Eve typically. It'd be Christmas Eve, and I'd look at you with this. All of a sudden, my eyes would get big. I don't think we got them enough. Yeah. I don't think we did enough. We got them
plenty.
And you're like, we did fine. And there were a couple of Christmases you indulged my thought process, and you're like, okay, go ahead and do that.
And
then.
Sometimes the expect wasn't what you thought it would be.
No, it was funny. Like it just didn't even have any effect, and it's like, why did I do that? So, but our kids are always they were so grateful through the years too, which made it really fun. But yeah, I think you working with me through that to say it's not about the number of gifts under the tree. It really isn't.
Right. And
it's about all these other things.
Right. And there really was, looking back at our memories of when the kids were little, none of it, I mean, there's some memories that are tied to a specific gift, but that wasn't it. It was just the joy that we had and the love that we shared. And especially when like the kids would get each other something kind of silly and make it and wrap it up. And I made something for you, Jeremiah. And she had made some kind of thing and he opens up, wow, this is the best thing ever, sister. And I was like, that's what I want back, is those like little things that they did for each other. But it's funny about Christmas
Especially
being,
when they talked with those voices.
yes, they always talk to such cute little voices. But now we're in, I think Christmas is less complicated than it used to be in terms of our emotional. I think we both understand where we're at better. But now we are entering a new season of Christmas getting complicated because we have an
for different
in-law.
reasons,
Yeah,
though,
now we
yeah.
have to deal with sounds like it's a negative thing, but now we have to accommodate and work with and schedule plans with the, an in-law situation, and then our son being out of town, and how does that schedule, and scheduling this person with that person, and who's going to be where and when, and how are we working it out. But again, I'm kind of going, you know what? It's going to be complicated, but it's okay. Like just accepting it, and it's going to be okay. And again, it's almost like with you, like this is where we're at, and doing, hey, you know what? Christmas might look different than it used to be when they all were little and talking in little voices, but I still love it and we still enjoy it. And we get back to, again, we want to be together, but even that start getting more difficult to do. But to, be loving and saying, hey, it's about shining light into those places and not,
Yeah,
getting
so
cranky about it.
I think some of the big things I've learned in a quick takeaway before we wrap this up is just number one, it's okay to not be okay. And I think having you, Tara, so close, having someone so close to me who really genuinely cared about me, it wasn't like you were complaining or saying, get with the program, stop it. You were able to kind of walk with me through that. And I think that made a huge difference. And then really trusting God with the process, taking those steps where God led for healing. The work was being done in June and showing up in December, right? It just kind of that the work doesn't always show up exactly when you're doing it, but God is so faithful to walk through that. And then finally back to that, being able to have someone that you can confide in and you can really talk to, having a good friend, a spouse in particular that you can.
This is
really
why it's
share.
hard,
Yeah,
right? This is why it's hard.
Made a huge difference. And then I felt like when I was at your family parties or at these places where everybody seems to be, because again, you turn on the TV, the commercials, everywhere you look, everybody's having the time of their life.
And they have a perfect family.
And it can make you feel lonely if you're not.
Lonelier.
Right. And not realizing everybody is struggling just like you. It's just on different levels. Like even you with great Christmases, you still had things you were processing and working through. So I think understanding that we're all in this together, but if we have someone that we can walk with through that, it does make a huge difference to know that we're not alone. So when we go to those parties, you'd walk over and grab my hand at times, or you'd look at me and smile and just kind of let me know that you knew.
Yeah.
I'm right here with you.
And I come back to again, which feelings we should be feeling.
Yeah.
And sure, I could say, hey, you should be not so cranky, or, you should be happier. And that doesn't really help anybody. And I think learn to go, hey, if there's someone in your life that's just like, this season's hard. Okay, so be it. I'm sorry, give you a hug. How can I bless you? How can I serve you? But what is not serving in general is, would you just cheer up?
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
And I think it is important to talk to someone because there were probably a lot of people in my life that had no idea I was struggling. Because most people will rise to the occasion for the surface side because, again, we don't want to ruin anyone else's Christmas. So, but having you there when I'm in the midst of a party where no one knows that I'm struggling in that moment, but if you know and you're able to communicate that through a look or a glance or whatever, it just makes it less lonely. And again, walking with God is huge. I could not have. Honestly, who knows? We just wouldn't get through it without him, but he's so faithful.
Well, I'm making, again, an understanding when we celebrate Christmas and Jesus' birth, it's not, again, we're not celebrating Christmas trees and Santa. That's not how we exhibit that. That's just an extra little, side dish, you know what I mean? But it's not the main appetizer. And to say, okay, what does this really mean when we say Jesus came to earth? What does it really mean and how does it affect our lives? And as we dwell on that, we find more hope than saying, just put up more Christmas trees.
Well, it is honestly, number one, the greatest story ever told. It is the greatest gift ever given. And the older that I get, the more I realize how desperate I am for Jesus. All I have to do is think for half a second, a world without Christ, a world where God doesn't send his son to save me. and I become extremely over grateful in gratitude. And once gratitude begins to fill, and we've talked about this in a episode a couple of weeks ago or whatever, but once gratitude begins to enter the equation, then a lot of that joy begins to surface.
Well, and I think when we're looking at the meaning of Christmas as well, besides the cultural end of things, it's still saying it was a dark world that Jesus came into, right? When he came to shine a light, it wasn't everyone was having a great time at the party and Jesus showed up. Then you gotta get it. But like, wait, no, it was a dark world. And so in our lives right now, there's still darkness and things that we struggle with and areas that, evil kind of is having the last say, and to say that's the world that Jesus came into. So that's why it's okay if Christmas feels complicated.
If you relate to some of the things that we shared, maybe you're feeling that loneliness, or you just want someone to pray for you or someone to listen, you can drop us a line, anything. You don't have to share anything you don't feel comfortable sharing. Just, hey, Joe and Tara, I need prayer or whatever. You can drop us a line anytime. Email is the best way to get in touch with us. That's Tara, Tara, at behindoursmiles.com.
There we go. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
and Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. It's the Christmas
all that
season.
Good stuff.
Here we go. We'll see you again next week.
Behind Our Smiles is a Wow God production. Discover more at wowgod.com.